So OpenAI recently released a new tool which they call Prism. It's supposedly a research tool. It looks a lot like a service which already exists, which is called OverLeaf, in which you can effectively type up scientific documents using what's known as LaTeX. It's kind of like a type of code, sort of, in which you can typeset mathematical equations and, add diagrams. And in a lot of disciplines, especially mathematics and physics, LaTeX is pretty much ubiquitous and you can't write a research document without it. Now, when I saw this advert, I thought it looked really, really cool, so I'm very excited to test this. So here we are, this is OpenAI's Prism. As you can see, it's kind of a service in which you can type scientific documents up and it kind of implements ChatGPT so that perhaps you can accelerate your workflow. Now, as a quick comparison, the best go-to solution at the moment for typing these kind of documents, especially in a shared context where multiple people can kind of work on the same document, is known as OverLeaf. So it's something like this, and you can kind of type in the code for the document, and as you can see, it will always kind of compile it on the right. I have to say it's very smooth, so this document is really, really long. It's got loads of pages, no problem. So this is what OpenAI are competing with, in my opinion. Although OverLeaf does include some AI tools, it's not something that I've actually ended up using myself, and in any case I don't think it's as well implemented as what OpenAI are suggesting that Prism offers. So we're importing this project and we're going to see how it runs compared to OverLeaf. Here we are, so these are all of the different things that I've kind of worked on. Okay, so it runs pretty well. I think it seems slightly more laggy. I don't know if that's easy to pick up on YouTube, but if I go to OverLeaf, it feels like I'm getting a way higher refresh rate. For research that's not necessarily that big of a deal. Like, look how smooth that is. I hope that it comes across. And then look, it just feels like I'm unstable FPS even. It's just a bit laggy. I don't know if they're running this on a potato or something, but it's just not as good as OverLeaf, which is surprising actually. I really would have thought with like all of the compute infrastructure that they've built out, they would have some, enough CPU. It's quite slow. There's an input lag as well. It's subtle, but I do believe it's there. You can gaslight me into thinking that it's not there, but I'm pretty sure it is there. So I'm going to take this section here, which is kind of something that I worked on a while ago. It's a small little theorem within a larger context of lots of other things, and we're going to see what Prism can do with it. So let's see. If I highlight this, we can say proofread. These are scrap notes, by the way. I'm not okay, I do know how to do punctuation to some extent. So I messed it up. I actually somehow got rid of the corrections. I think they were actually quite good. But I am wondering whether it will give the same improvements, like whether it's repeatable. Because if this is using ChatGPT, I'm wondering if there is like a consistent answer to the correction. So, okay, no, this is exactly the same thing. So, okay, so I'm going to keep those. That's nice. So here's a section. It's just like a little subsection where I've just put one formula because it's something that I want to look at, which is called the ratios theorem. And basically, when you do something which is related to the Riemann zeta function in random matrix theory, there's this term which I've worked with a fair bit, and then there's these other terms that are more complicated, and the kind of symmetries, I guess, seem to change. I'd kind of added this, and I haven't got much discussion on this formula, and this was always something that I wanted to look at. So I wonder if we can basically see if it can give an introduction to this, because I haven't actually had time to really work on it that much. So I've asked it to give a historical overview as to where the formula comes from. This is just me inputting into the UI as I would kind of guess that it would go. This is okay, so here we are. So this is a okay, so this is true. Technically speaking, this is definitely one way of doing it, but okay, so I mean, I'm not denying the history, but that's not really okay, so here we are, that's what I'm talking about. So I was about to say that it was good that they highlighted that, but it's kind of highlighted a lot of things, which makes it kind of hard to see whether it knows what it's doing. I mean, to be fair, I did ask it for a history of it, so I'm not, I shouldn't complain that it gives me a history of it. It is actually giving a history of it. I guess what I mean is that this formula, this way of writing this formula, what it's doing, as far as I'm aware, is that it's giving a history of the left-hand side, because this way of writing the right-hand side wasn't something, I don't believe, that you get from just using like the previous like historical classical results, like Weyl integration formula and stuff like that. Yeah, perhaps it's derived using that formula, but in any case, what I was really asking was for the CFKRS formula, which is here. So my first conclusion of this is it's cool because it did give a historical overview, but it didn't actually look at the formula itself. So this formula is quite specifically for what's called moments of characteristic polynomials, but it's not just any formula, because there's loads of different ways of representing these things in all kinds of different cases, and basically it's not really, again, okay, it did reference it, the CFKRS, but to be fair, I would have liked to see it actually reference this, to immediately jump to that's what this is. It's not just some other determinantal expression for the same thing. If you imagine you've got one thing and you can represent it in loads of different ways based on like what you're trying to ask about, like what information you're asking about that thing, and this way of writing it is a very specific thing. Now, I don't want to be too negative on this because this is really what I asked. I did say give a historical overview of where this formula comes from. So maybe the fact that I said historical overview of where this formula comes from means it's going to try and go into like the actual history of what happened before that formula. So I could have been more specific, which is kind of what my only concern is with this Prism, is that basically why would I use Prism over using OverLeaf plus ChatGPT on thinking mode, extended thinking mode? This isn't actually even linked to my ChatGPT account. I feel like you're going to get a better deal if you're going to use OverLeaf plus extended thinking mode rather than one of the like more efficient models that doesn't do all of this large amount of thinking time. Yeah, I'm actually going to be a bit more specific and ask it to write an introduction, but solely in the context of this CFKRS paper, to see what it says, like whether it understands where it comes from. Maybe we can ask about some symmetries to this formula, but yeah, I have some thoughts about that. So what I'm asking it now is, I've said write a paragraph which comprehensively describes this formula in this CFKRS context. So that's a specific paper and what each term means. If it doesn't get this right, I'm going to be quite surprised actually, because I'm being quite explicit, asking it to basically come up with this idea of like the swap terms. Okay, fair play. It's written a whole bunch. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so this, I have to say, this is horrible. To me, to look at this is horrible. It just doesn't look very nice. There's something about it that just doesn't look right. I don't know how to put it. I mean, there's equations everywhere on the inside. It's not like, it's a mix of some equations that are too small and some that are too big for being in a paragraph, but then they're too small for being their own equation because they're not described well enough. Okay, so this is cool. Okay, so the first term is a no swap term. Contribution is purely diagonal pairing between the z variables and the w variables, and it's the Cauchy kernel. That's also true. Equivalently, a geometric series sum, and that's also true as well. I mean, okay, I can't really complain, to be honest. If it did write a paragraph like that looked really nice just off that, like when you look at it, it looks nice, and when you read it, it sounds nice, I would be quite worried. I think this would have looked bad even in a master's thesis, to be honest. Like, it sounds good. It sounds like the person knows what they're talking about. Like, they clearly know a lot, but it's not really formatted very nicely. I mean, it doesn't look very nice in my opinion. But it did answer my question. It's just I would have to write it again. So again, it's a bit like I do wonder what it's doing, whether it's any better than ChatGPT, because this is kind of, I don't really necessarily want this in the document. You may as well just write it at that point. This block, it leaves some to be desired, but it's still really cool. It's nice to see ChatGPT implemented into a LaTeX editor. I do really rate it, although this needs a lot of work. Is the first thing I can say about that. So maybe let's ask it to do something that I've been thinking about, which, to be fair, I don't know if it's mumbo jumbo. It probably is mumbo jumbo, by the way. Okay, so this is kind of, I think I'm asking too much, to be honest. So it basically said, I think that the zero swap term transforms like a conformal correlator, pulls out the gamma Cij when you apply the conformal transformations, Mobius in this case. However, when you look at higher order swap terms, it seems that this kind of conformal type primary operator transformation property is lost. Write an analysis of this. And it's thinking, so we'll see, maybe we can get an estimate of which model it's using. So it's already given an answer. So it was only about 10 seconds, I would say. Whereas this one, I put it in before and it's still thinking. So you would expect, I think this is just the standard GPT 5.2, basically auto or instant. What you're seeing is a very natural structure once you do zero swap terms and on a CFT Hardy space kernel. Corrections that break the four Mobius covariance. Okay, I did think that might be what it is, but I don't want it to be making me think things that aren't true, but making me think that I'm clever just because I've asked it this question, if that makes sense. A basic identity gives you the covariance of the kernel. That seems reasonable. I don't really see, I mean, that looks like algebra, right? So it's taking, okay. So it's relating. I guess these are like the transformed coordinates, I guess. So z's going to 5z, and it's showing how the correlator function, this k of zw, so this bit here, is transforming when we apply a transformation to it. But those transformations are basic. This is just a Mobius transformation. Transformation produces a clean multiplicative factor, i.e. a conformally covariant structure with weight Cij. Fair enough. I mean, it is mental, to be fair, that it understands what you're talking about. Like, if anything, it understands it more than I do, and I feel like I did spend a decent amount of time at the time on this stuff. So I guess it's this that I wanted to know, is that it's got Mobius covariance built in. I don't know whether there's any interest in listening to me read maths, so I'll probably edit a lot of that out. But I have to say, that's pretty cool to have ChatGPT in here, so like that you can kind of work with and discuss what you're looking at. Yeah, slightly better, I would say, more intuitive explanation with ChatGPT to me. It fixes these Mobius transformations, and that kernel is Mobius covariant up to simple multiplicative factors. I really do hope it's not glazing me. I mean, I don't think it is, to be honest, because it does, like, that's obviously transforms like a conformal correlator. To me, that's fairly obvious. I don't think I'm saying anything particularly deep. But what I've always been interested in is this other term, all of the other ones, you know, if we go to the notes, where it mixes everything up. You see, everything gets all out of whack and you have no idea what the is going on. You're like, what is that? So I've had a look at this Prism software for a while now, and I have to say it's a lot better than I kind of thought it would be going into it. My main flaw, actually, I would say, is that it's a bit laggy, to be fair. On the compiled side, I think that the UI is pretty intuitive. I had no idea what I was doing, and I still managed to kind of get it to answer things that I wanted to. And the answers seem pretty good, actually. So if you go through, what I like about these short answers is they include a lot of equations, which even if you look at the ChatGPT thinking mode, you know, it has a lot of equations at the first bit, but it stops quite quickly. You know, around here it starts going. I think it's clear that they're using the standard GPT-5 for this. I would like to see them implement it so that you could actually link your account. I don't see why you wouldn't want your main account linked. I'd really much rather have extended thinking mode, or even have the option to have extended thinking mode. Give me the answers back here, like just like in ChatGPT, where you have the choice. If you want your question to have more thinking time, then to have it have more thinking time. I think that surprisingly, the best aspect of this tool is actually as a spell checker, coupled with a good UI and an ability to ask ChatGPT questions relating to your document. As a piece of software, I really like it. You can just straight up copy the code and ask the question right there. You don't have to change tabs, because it gets really hectic. I find I've got so many tabs up, and sometimes I lose track of where each tab is. You might be reading like some archive documents, some books, might be having a conversation with ChatGPT about one thing and then reading your own document and making edits on that. I'm really glad that OpenAI keep pushing and trying to get themselves kind of well positioned in kind of these research level tools. Definitely noticed that ChatGPT, in my opinion, is the best model for maths. I really do rate extended thinking. I'm going to keep testing it, and in doing so, I hope that it will become, you know, my preference over OverLeaf. So thank you very much for all of the support. You guys are amazing, and I will see you in the next one.